All right, so welcome to the webinar of the season for writing the college essay. And I know there's a lot of questions about this, a lot of anxiety maybe. So this webinar is here to help you sort of take it apart piece by piece, work on it step by step, become more familiar with this strange writing exercise. And if you do have questions, please save them for the end. I'm going to open up for questions then. You can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom. You can throw them in the chat. Even if you would like, you can raise your hand, use the raise hand feature in the Zoom at the bottom. And I might even put you live to get your question. So first things first. Let's learn about the agenda for the day. So the first thing we're going to learn about is admissions officers. Who are they? Whom are they looking for? There is something very peculiar about the college essay, which is its audience. So many of us have written essays in high school and maybe even have written something personal, like a creative writing project. But a creative personal essay for this specific task of getting a college to get to know you is a whole special thing. And so the first thing we got to figure out is who are the readers, who are the people that we're communicating with when we're doing an application, because it's very specific. And it means that what we write, how we write, the voice we use should match that audience. So we're going to learn all about that. We're going to learn about this thing called a wow essay. So I have after many years of experience in this field and helping hundreds and hundreds of students write really strong essays that get them into all the top schools, I have learned that there is a kind of formula, if you will, to a college essay that can really help. Now, every essay is unique. There is a kind of special magic to everyone's voice and storytelling and thinking. So there is no specific like ABC formula that anyone could ever put together to make a perfect essay, because the essay that's perfect is the one that communicates you. And so we will get into how to find that. But to get started, there are a few key elements that I call a wow, and we'll get into that. We're going to look at two different kinds of structures for a wow essay. Not every form of essay is right for everyone, so we're going to look at two key ones that I think match a lot of different students. And then we are going to brainstorm the first draft of your college essay. We're actually going to do it in this hour together. So I will be sending you a link to a web page where you can do that. There's a specific exercise we're going to do that's really helped many students get their essays started very quickly to find a really unique topic. So, and then lastly, your questions. So let's talk about admissions officers. Now, if any of you have been to my webinars or my classes before, this is review for you, but this is important to review. So on the left, you have David, who is a reader at Cornell, and on the right, you have Helen, who is at Yale and MIT. And they see some very interesting, unique things about what they're looking for that may be a surprise. David says, one year I had a student with a near perfect SAT score and straight A's. Now, he makes it sound like 1 year we had this student. This is almost everybody applying to a top school at Cornell. So everyone is coming in with these very, very high scores and grades and GPAs and really impressive transcripts. So like quantitatively, they are all pretty equal. But then he says, I'd originally put him in the submitted pile, but then we had to reduce the list. And this is how it always works. You get a big pile of students that kind of get past the quantitative threshold, the numbers threshold, which is like the first handshake. And then they get on to the character piece, which is a lot more nuanced. And he says, I reread his essays and frankly, they were just a little more boring than the other kids, so I cut him. Boring was the only justification that I needed, and he was out. This is important to remember. This is an important thing to think about. These readers are reading, thousands of applications every year. They're reading 100 essays a week, maybe more. And it's very crucial that they have an experience of connection with the student in the application. And the essay is where that happens. So if the essay does not grab their interest, the application, at least at these top schools, is going to get put into the reject pile in the early rounds. So I really want to reemphasize this with what Helen says. Some 70% of kids who apply here are qualified to come to school here, and we have space for 1 in 10. So she's talking about, again, that numbers game. So 70% of the kids who apply get past that first threshold of GPAs and transcripts and a number of AP classes and SAT scores. So it really comes down to the character piece and the statements where they make a connection. And she says, because of those numbers, they can be as choosy as they like. It almost always comes down to whether or not you're a likable person. An admissions officer is really asking herself, would I like to hang out with this guy or gal for the next 4 years? So it's not how impressed am I about this by this person, how much will they wow everyone else at this school. It's, would I like to hang out with them? Would I want to have a conversation? Would I want to sit down and have a tea or a coffee with this person and kind of hear about them and their life and pick their brain and listen to more about how they think about things and look at things? That is a very special task, to communicate that side of yourself that people take interest in. And this is really key for the admissions process, because when it comes to the more competitive schools, the character side of your application, your essays, your resume of activities, and your rec letters from your teachers, these all come together to make the character side of your application, constitute 70% of the decision when all other elements are equal. So GPAs and test scores and the quote, difficulty of the school that you went to. So that's really important to think about when you're putting your statements together. They need to be done with some care. They need to communicate things about you that you really want colleges to know and that really fit what colleges are looking for. So let's talk about that in the next slide. I call this, like I mentioned earlier, the WOW approach. The WOW approach for me is a way to give each writer a shorthand for the elements their essay ought to have so it communicates their character and the side of their character that colleges connect with, the student side of you, the side that loves to nerd out, that is passionate about learning. So the first part is identifying a want. So I like to think of this as the 4 a.m. test. What would you stay up until 4 a.m. to do or wake up at 4 a.m. to do? This does not have to be academic, right? This could be anything authentic to you. So we're going to be making some lists of some of this stuff. You can start thinking about it now. I really encourage you. It could be marine biology and like going out to tide pools and looking at sea anemones and what's going on in marine life. But it could also be things that are more idiosyncratic, like I just love hanging out with my favorite aunt. The way we hang out and talk, I could do forever. So that's the kind of thing you want to think about when you're identifying the want. The second thing is your original voice. So a lot of students come with an essay where they're talking about something they want, something that they're pursuing that they want. Um, it could be academic, it could be the love of working with younger people, like tutoring kids or babysitting. But what they don't do is they don't tell a story about it in a voice that's really unique. Another way to think about original voice is point of view. All of us have a really specific point of view, and a really strong college essay gets that point of view down on the page. It comes across to the reader. And one of the easiest ways to get that point of view is to talk about what you love. So you're going to that list of things you love, tell a story about that, one of those things, in which you're pursuing it, in which you're even struggling to pursue it. That, my friends, brings out a really strong voice. The other thing that brings out voice is when you share your wisdom. So the last W in the wow. Every essay that really lands has space in it for reflection. It's a space where the writer is sharing what they learn about themselves from their journey, from the story they're telling, or even just shares their capacity for associating and thinking out loud and reflecting in a way that brings the reader into it and really helps the reader know what it's like to think like you do. That's really important. So we're going to do some exercises today to get at these original wants, original voice, and reflections. All right, so I want to give you a few key examples of essays that I think really land. These are somewhat common structures in the admissions process, but because even though they're common, it does not mean what you do with them will be uncommon. Will also be common, I mean. It's really how you fill the structure that matters. So when I'm sharing these structures, I'm not giving you some like secret something that no one else has. These are very, very common, but it's nice to know them. It's nice to have your mind kind of wrapped around them because it does help the writing process. So the first one's called a challenge essay. This is what a lot of students, I would say the majority of students, this is the structure they do. A challenge essay is essentially a hero's journey. So maybe you've heard of that idea, the hero's journey. Star Wars is a hero's journey. Finding Nemo is a hero's journey. Harry Potter, hero's journey. Essentially, a character goes on an important journey of learning that changes them. So a hero's journey or a challenge essay is an essay in which you tell the story of your journey of learning and how that changed you. That's what's most important about it, by the way. You're changing. This kind of essay, and we'll look at an example of one in just a second, is really, really excellent for showing your character. There's a certain character traits that colleges love, things like resilience or grit, resourcefulness, thoughtfulness, curiosity, empathy. These challenge essays can really share some of these qualities very well. Most important, they will share your desire to grow and learn. They are really good for students who are really strong storytellers. So this is a very good form for a storyteller, a student who has a really strong sense of story and how to tell a good joke, for example. This is also a good form for students who have a sense of what they want to study or do in college. So if you are really clear, I would love to do business in school, or I'd love to do history or pre-med, this is a really good choice for you. It doesn't mean the other structure I'm going to share isn't a good choice, but in general, I find students who already have a strong sense of what they want to study, telling a good story about pursuing that area of knowledge is a good way to go. And in essence, story is a very powerful way for people to see you in 3 dimensions. And when you are already very clear about your area of study, the thing you need to do is give yourself dimension and not let the label of pre-med or pre-law or business or, French major limit the imagination of the reader about you. So story is the best way to give that humanization, that 3-dimensional view of you. So let's take a look at a very good challenge essay. This is written by, he's now a sophomore at University of Michigan, a writer named Tadeo Messenger. And I'm just going to read this aloud. And as I do this, I want you to listen for a few key things. I want you to listen for the challenge of the essay that he brings up, the passion. What is this person passionate about? And that passion coming through, do you hear it? I want you to listen for that journey of learning that I mentioned earlier. What are the stages of that journey? And then in the end, what is the message about this student that they're communicating by telling the story? What character qualities are they communicating to the reader? All right. So let's have a listen. My friends and peers don't understand my relationship with Big Betsy. This is mainly due to the fact that Big Betsy is far older, louder, and larger than what is considered, quote, normal at my school. She is constantly surrounded by others who serve the same exact purpose, but are more elegant. Big Betsy was always different. Every time I went out with her, I could feel judgmental eyes wondering why a kid like me would even want anything to do with her. Despite this, I was always proud of her and what we accomplished together. She was made fun of relentlessly, but I always knew deep down that we had something special together. It was like we had known each other for years when I first laid eyes on her. I was sure that we would stay together for a long time. I still remember driving down the winding country road to the Sailor's sprawling ranch and instantly falling for her. The way that she glistened in the sunlight beckoned me to her. I had no problem spending the money for her that I had accumulated over years of saving birthday gifts, doing undesirable odd jobs, and babysitting unruly children. To me, she was worth more than my entire bank account. Big Betsy has been loyal to me throughout the past couple of years. She provided me, I just got a message. She even provided me with the opportunity to set up my own business, the Westport Workers. My friend and I realized that all the dump run services in our town were grossly overcharging their customers, so we decided to provide an inexpensive alternative. We have worked countless jobs together, including transporting an antique bar counter 50 miles away for a Gilmore Girls fan club meeting and hauling a battered boat motor through knee-deep sludge to dispose of it at the dump. Big Betsy and I are constantly relying on each other to get things done. In the blistering summer heat, she would wait patiently for me while I pulled weeds for hours on end. With sweat trickling down my face, I would take shelter from the sun in her soft embrace. She and I made a respectable living through our business, and I would always make sure to buy her the things that she required to keep her going. In case it isn't obvious, Big Betsy is my beloved truck, a 1998 Ford F-150 with over 230,000 miles. The first months I had her, I spent all my time between early morning football and work fixing her up, and it was worth it. Not only has she been a great truck, she also helped me to realize how little other people's judgments of me matter. I used to be shy and avoided differentiating myself from my classmates because I was very concerned about what others would think about me. In a school almost entirely minority-free, I was always uncomfortable with my ethnicity and even my name. I felt extremely self-conscious every time that I pulled into the high school parking lot filled with Mercedes, Jeep Wranglers, and BMWs. However, as time went on, Big Betsy became a bit of a local celebrity, and I became more confident, and not only while driving. I found myself less anxious when voicing my opinions, applying for leadership options, and challenging myself to do better in all aspects of my life. Big Betsy made me realize how damaging it can be to my potential when I become unwilling to stand out or take the risks required to achieve my goals. If it wasn't for her teaching me how to be confident in myself and that it is good to be pushed out of my comfort zone, I would not be nearly as happy as I am today. All right, there's a lot of good things about this essay. There's a lot to admire. I want to name a few of them. So obviously, this person is passionate about Betsy, their truck. And you probably guessed it, the challenge this writer is facing in this challenge essay is fitting in. So the truck doesn't fit into the school car culture, and Tadeo doesn't fit in, being one of the few minorities and being kind of shy. There are 4 parts to a challenge essay, and I want to break down how Tadeo does it. Now, Tadeo's story tells the different parts of the challenge somewhat out of order. I want to talk a bit about why he does that. So the first part is called Status Quo, and this is the part where Tadeo falls in love with Betsy, and they accomplish all these great things together and care for each other. And the challenge is the second part. And that comes in when his peers make fun of Betsy and Tadeo must face his shyness and get stronger. The third part of a challenge is called Trial and Error. It's when the character tests out different strategies for overcoming the challenge. So Tadeo runs a hauling business, and fixes Betsy up, and that builds his confidence. So basically running an independent business builds Tadeo's confidence. And that leads to the fourth part, which is the new world, the new you, the new person. Betsy becomes a bit of a school celebrity, and Tadeo takes on leadership at school and is no longer shy. So a little bit about the order here. Tadeo actually starts the essay, if you can remember, with the second part of the challenge story, which is the challenge arriving. The peers making fun of Betsy. So Tadeo does that so that it grabs the reader's attention. This is a really smart thing to do if you want to do a challenge essay for your college essay. Start at step 2, get the reader's attention, meet the reader right at the moment the challenge meets you. And then flash back to the status quo to give the background. And then you can jump back into the story where the challenge was introduced and you are doing the trial and error phase. That structure is a really great structure. So let's talk about how to start a challenge essay. I'm going to talk to you more about how to find a topic, but in terms of getting this essay written, once you have the story or the topic, this is how I recommend you get it started. The first thing, of course, is identify that passion. And making a list of stories in which you struggle to pursue that passion. So in Tadeo's case, it was the truck Betsy. Then, of course, you want to break it down into these 4 parts. Life before you met this challenge, so status quo. Then the moment the challenge comes and forces you to change. That's the moment you know the challenge has arrived. You are forced to change to meet the challenge. Then all the different things you do to try and meet the challenge, the trial and error phase, and then at last succeed. And then fourth, the new you, the person you have become because you tried to meet this challenge. The other thing you want to do is identify a theme to your growth. So in Tadeo's case, it was gaining confidence. You want to make a list of all your questions and insights and observations about your theme, about your growth. You want to use this list to weave reflections through your essay. So Tadeo had a few moments of reflection, talking about not worrying so much what others think, for example, was a moment of reflection. You need to have these for your essay to really be more than just a story. For it to truly be an essay, you need moments of reflection. And I'll talk more about that later on in this webinar. So the next kind of essay I want us to think about is called a patchwork essay. This is a little more sophisticated in terms of structure. Sometimes it takes a little bit of guidance, but this is a very good one for a certain kind of student. So what makes a patchwork essay? Patchwork essays use what's called associative structure. So rather than a story moving the essay forward, it uses associations or riffs on a favorite thing, a place, an object, or a ritual. These associations on the favorite place, object, or ritual become the content of the essay. The place, object, or ritual become what's called a framing device. So maybe you've heard of this idea of a framing device. In essence, it's essentially a topic that you discuss and return to it over and over as you riff. And we're about to read an essay that gives a good example of how this works. So if you're not quite understanding it right now, no worries, we will figure this out together. These kinds of essays are really good for students who want to show their capacity for thinking. So colleges are definitely looking for strong thinkers, for fellow nerds. And this essay structure is a really, really powerful structure for showing your capacity to think in fresh ways, to make associations between unlike things, and to interrogate and question things that maybe others don't question. This demonstration of thinking in your essay can go a really long way to opening up college doors. This is also a really good structure for interdisciplinary students or for schools that really emphasize interdisciplinary learning. Brown, Michigan, these are the schools that tend to really embrace interdisciplinary learning and really expect it from their students. Students that are undeclared, totally cool to be undeclared. College in the beginning was really designed to show up undeclared, and then through the experience of the exposure to the core curriculum, you would find what you want to go do and specialize in. There are schools that definitely specialize in this. Columbia is one, but most schools have a core education that you go through for the first year or two before you start really focusing. And I think students these days really forget that most universities are designed like that. That's what college is designed to be. And so if you are applying without having an exact idea of what you want to study or major in, absolutely cool. Absolutely cool. There are hundreds of colleges that are designed for students at that place. If you have questions about this, though, please raise your hand or put it in the Q&A. I'm happy to give you my thoughts on the nuances of this idea of declaring a major or not when you apply. All right, so let's take a look at a very famous patchwork essay. Now, some of you may know this. I'm going to read it aloud for us. It is shared around quite a bit, but it does an amazing job of communicating this structure and how it, and does a really great job of demonstrating how it can show the student's capacity for thinking. This student got into all those schools you see in the image. Brittany got into every single Ivy League school, plus Stanford and I think MIT. And I think now she's at Stanford. No, she's graduated now. I think she went there. All right. So let's take a listen. Oh, what to listen for? There's a few key things that I want you to listen for. What is the framing device she uses? What are the different associations or categories of associations she makes as she talks about the topic? She has sort of different lanes that she kind of shoots off into as she thinks out loud with you. And I want you to see if you can identify those. Managing to break free from my mother's grasp, I charged. With arms flailing and chubby legs fluttering beneath me, I was the ferocious 2-year-old rampaging through Costco on a Saturday morning. My mother's eyes widened in horror as I jettisoned my churro. The cinnamon sugar rocket gracefully sliced its way through the air while I continued my spree. I sprinted through the aisles, looking up in awe at the massive bulk products that towered over me. Overcome with wonder, I wanted to touch and taste, to stick my head into industrial-sized freezers to explore every crevice. I was a conquistador, but rather than searching the land of El Dorado, I scoured aisles for free samples. Before inevitably being whisked away into a shopping cart, I scaled a mountain of plush toys and surveyed the expanse that lay before me, the kingdom of Costco. Notorious for its oversized portions and $1.50 hot dog combo, Costco is the apex of consumerism. From the days spent being toted around in a shopping cart to when I was finally tall enough to reach the lofty sample trays, Costco has endured a steady presence throughout my life. As a veteran Costco shopper, I navigate the aisles of foodstuffs, thrusting the majority of my weight upon a generously filled shopping cart, whose enormity juxtaposes my small frame. Over time, I've developed a habit of observing fellow patrons tote their carts piled with frozen burritos, cheese puffs, tubs of ice cream, and weight loss supplements. Perusing the aisles gave me time to ponder. Who needs 3 pounds of sour cream? Was cultured yogurt any more well-mannered than its uncultured counterpart? Costco gave birth to my unfettered curiosity. While enjoying an obligatory hot dog, I did not find myself thinking about all the all-beef goodness that Costco boasted. I instead considered finitudes and infinitudes, unimagined uses of tubs of sour cream, the projectile motion of said tub when launching from an 80-foot shelf, or maybe when pushed from a speedy cart by a scrawny 17-year-old. I contemplated the philosophical. If there exists a 33-ounce jar of Nutella, do we really have free will? I experienced a harsh physics lesson when observing a shopper who had no evident familiarity of inertia's workings. With a cart filled to overflowing, she made her way towards the sloped exit, continuing to push and push, while steadily losing control until the cart escaped her and went crashing into a concrete column, 52-inch plasma screen, TV screen, and all. Purchasing the Yuletide hickory smoked ham inevitably led to a conversation between my father and me about Andrew Jackson's controversiality. There was no questioning Old Hickory's dedication, yet he was steadfast in his beliefs and pursuits, qualities I'm compelled to admire. Yet his morals were crooked. We both found the ham to be more likable and tender. I adopted my exploratory skills, fine-tuned by Costco, towards my intellectual endeavors. Just as I sampled buffalo chicken dip or chocolate truffles, I probed the realms of history, dance, and biology, all in pursuit of the social ideal cart, one overflowing with theoretical situations and notions both silly and serious. I sampled calculus, cross-country running, scientific research, all of which are now household favorites. With cart in hand, I do what scares me. I absorb the warehouse that is the world. Whether it be through attempting aerial yoga, learning how to chart black body radiation using astronomical software, or dancing in front of hundreds of people, I am compelled to try any activity that interests me in the slightest. My intense desire to know, to explore beyond the bounds of rational thought. This is what defines me. Costco fuels my insatiability and cultivates curiosity within me at a cellular level. Encoded to immerse myself in the unknown, I find it difficult to complacently accept the quote what. I want to hunt for the quote whys and dissect the quote hows. In essence, I subsist on discovery. Whew, all right. There's a lot to admire about this one as well, guys. So, let's talk about some of the elements of this essay. So obviously, the topic is shopping at Costco. She comes back to it again and again. And by the way, if you have any questions at all, please throw them in the Q&A, throw them in the chat. We will definitely get to them. What is her framing device? It is obviously her trips to Costco from childhood through to today. Her theme is her intense desire to know, her insatiable curiosity. So the message about her is, I'm someone who loves to try anything and everything, to get to know it. I am an omnivore of everything knowable. She uses her childhood visits to associate to the actual topic of curiosity and questioning. And then as a teenager, she looks at things like the physics of shopping carts and the history of Andrew Jackson. She really goes to all of her, pet curiosities in this essay. And I think models something you all can do if you want to pursue this style of structure. So how to start one of these? First, you need to identify a place, an object, or a ritual that you love and make a list of stories about it. We're going to do a little bit of this together in a minute. The next is to pick one to use as your frame. And I recommend choosing one moment, one story that you come back to again and again about this place, object, or ritual. So your essay lives inside the moment with this object or place or ritual that is important to you, an important moment, an important story. But the discussion travels away from it. So one way to help the discussion is to identify a theme to your relationship with this place, object, or ritual. Make a list of questions, insights, and observations about that theme or that relationship. And then as you associate to different stories and questions, you come back to the framing device. And as you can see in the Costco essay, she riffs on different things, but she always comes back to the experience of shopping at Costco. And there's many other things to admire about it as well. She uses a lot of wit and humor, which is something I really, really admire about her and really encourage you all to embrace too. All right, so the next thing I want you to do is to jump into this link I'm going to put into the chat. It's the College Essay Starter. Now, you can do this online if you like right now, or you can do this later. This is an exercise I have formed and formulated so that students can find a really good topic very quickly. This exercise takes about 15 minutes. I'm going to kind of walk through it briefly now so that you understand it. And I encourage you to do it while I speak or on your own later. And it's at my website at wildcollegesc.com. So if you ever get lost, you can just go to the site and the site can direct you to the tool. So this exercise also uncovers really great topics for supplements that are narrative and content for college interviews. So this is not just good for the essay, this is good for the entire application. All right, so the first thing you want to do in the essay starter is list your top 10 passions. So again, that 4 a.m. test, the thing you would stay up till 4 a.m. to do, or wake up at 4 a.m. to do. This could be huge things like cleaning the Pacific Ocean, or small things like shopping at Costco. Get to as many as possible. I want you to be careful with filling this out. You'll notice that there's a space for the item. Like let's say it's shopping at Costco is your passion. But then there's a space after it to explain why it's on the list. So shopping at Costco, and then there's the word because, and then fill in after the because, because it's what's after the because that really matters. That is where you find out if you have a compelling topic or not. So this student, Brittany, would write shopping at Costco because it inspires me to think about things in all these different ways. It piques my curiosity. So you want to get to 10. This, 10 is because it's hard to do to get to 10, but also it can get to some of those weirder passions of yours. And I really want you to encourage the weird. It is really easy to find the obvious stuff. And the obvious stuff can often be talked about by other people. And it's the less obvious stuff, the weirder stuff, that tends to make a greater essay. So things like my truck Betsy or shopping at Costco, you're not going to get anybody else writing an essay about those things. So those kinds of topics, those are the ones you want to get down. All right, and then beneath that in the essay starter is a list of your rituals and routines. So rituals and routines you do to connect with yourself, relax. Brittany could have put shopping at Costco there. I recommend, the things you do to unwind at the end of the day. An art practice is a great thing to put on this list. Things that are daily are great. Things that are also weekly and monthly are great. I have some students who put things like family dinner down for this. And family dinner can be a great topic. There are a few things that are perhaps not that useful to put down, things like getting on TikTok or watching YouTube. There's not going to be any student ever who's going to have an essay about that, I think, that's going to really work for them. So again, look for the because and explain why that's on your list. So shopping at Costco because it helps me connect to my insatiable curiosity. Then you want to think about situations that challenge you, people and situations that challenge you. Get to 10 of those. Not every student's going to have the right topic in every list. So you want to make sure you get to all 4 prompts in this exercise, because it's really surprised me. Sometimes there's nothing until all of a sudden in the last section, there's the nugget, there's the piece of gold. Don't be shy here. This is a list for you, for no one else. So feel free to get personal. I can guarantee you that the people who risk sharing something personal, disclosing something that they're maybe a little shy to share, really get the attention of colleges. Now, you don't have to be sharing all of your tragedies. I'm not saying that. Every struggle and tragedy story is not perhaps a good fit for the college essay. It also depends a little bit of how you want them to be framing you. I'm going to talk a bit about that in a second. But in general, risking disclosing something personal, I find to be a very brave and rewarding choice. So I encourage you to add that stuff to the list. But also the petty things that challenge you, that can be really fun. Petty challenges like, using a printer. I find that to be one of the most frustrating things on earth, making a printer work. That could be a really fun topic. Things that I would not include are things like online learning. Challenges that everyone faces are probably not a good use of this exercise. And then lastly, like I mentioned earlier, your 10 favorite places and objects. Again, you want to explain why they're on the list. You want to exclude things that most people might put, like their phone. Most people want to put their phone. I do also suggest not putting your car. Today I did an amazing job with talking about his truck. It had a name. It was very personal. So if you do have something like that with your car, why not? And again, explain why it's there. Today I would put my truck because it helped me gain confidence and start a business and become someone who could lead at school. Great. So that's the basic rundown with the essay starter. I just want to, and lastly, if you do this exercise online, hit submit. It will send you a copy of it, everything you wrote down, to you and to me, and you'll get a free consultation with me. I will literally go over this list with you and help you choose your topic for free. So a little incentive for you to get your essay started. A few general things about choosing a topic. A few general things about choosing a unique topic. It's kind of an oxymoron. First thing, you cannot get anything specific in the general store. The more specific you get about yourself, the better. So you want to look for what is most unique in your list. What would linger in the minds of a tired, quote, nerdy reader? So again, thinking about those admissions officers we met earlier, David and Helen. They're reading hundreds of these. They are fellow brainiacs, fellow nerds, if you will, people that have passions like you do. What would get them to wake up? You want to pick that really unique thing. What could no one else write about? That's another way to think about it. The weirder and the nerdier, the better. I like to say that schools don't admit princes and princesses. They admit nerds. Schools are for nerds. And even though there's still, different types of personality, and in college there are people who are like more of the popular or the geekier or so on, in the end, school is for learning very intensely. And that is, basically the definition of a geek or a nerd, someone that just shamelessly pursues what they love. A few things to avoid: death, divorce, depression, the 3Ds they would like to call them in the admissions world. Not saying that these aren't important parts of life and that we don't have ways to talk about them and have a point of view that's unique. However, I've found that most students struggle to find a point of view about these topics that is personal enough, that it's memorable. Another is the big game. The big game can be written down as a great challenge. However, it is such a common topic, it will make a student just completely disappear into the pile. Another is service trips. Now, service trips are very, very meaningful. I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing one. However, in general, service trips are challenges that are not intrinsic to you. They are sometimes, just kind of bought by families and students, or just intrinsic to being a member of a church, and sometimes can come off as a little bit like morality points, trying to talk about the service trip. So that is something I tend to dissuade. I have helped students write about service trips in the past. It doesn't not work. So I do recommend it if we can do it from a point of view that's really unique. And alongside with that, similar to that, are talking about expensive vacations. This epiphany I had while snorkeling in Acapulco. Again, there's going to be problems if we start talking about things like privilege, or things that come off as overly privileged. So in general, let's talk about things that have to do with you pursuing challenges on your own, going out and seeking out challenges above and beyond what's given to you. Another important thing to do in every essay is write from I. Sometimes students fall into the trap of speaking in a general narrator way, or even speaking from the point of view of you. These are really not uh, personal. It's a personal essay. So if you find your essay or your voice slipping into the general, narrating things in the omniscient narrator way, then it is time to go back and rewrite from your point of view. Everything should be from your point of view. Absolutely everything. One great thing about those two essays we looked at is that they included inner thoughts and emotions throughout. And so your point of view really is what sells everything. It's what they're looking for when they're reading. And so do it as much as possible. And then lastly, you want to avoid humble bragging. So this is like when you're telling a story about this great thing you did in order to come off as impressive. It may look humble that you helped all the autistic children in your, after school job, which is an amazing thing to do, by the way. Please help autistic people. But it can be kind of humble bragging when we talk about it in a way that shows some false humility. A few other key questions that people ask me. Should you talk about COVID? No. Do not talk about COVID in general. It is so common to everyone that it's just not unique enough to make you stand out. You can, however, talk about it in a section of your application called additional information. And I'm going to be talking about this in the webinar on Thursday, so please come back for that. It's a very key part of your experience, and they have a section for you to talk about it. It's just not a good thing for your statements. Another question I get a lot is, should you talk about racial justice? So in the wake of George Floyd and the racial justice reckoning that our country has been going through, a lot of students want to talk about it. It's big on our minds. And I think that it's really only important to talk about it if it was a passion long before the protests of 2020 and George Floyd. So I definitely have students that are definitely passionate about racial justice for a long time. And I very much encourage them to talk about it. But if it's just something you've started to get into because of the George Floyd protest, I would say don't, because it's called a polemic at that point. And polemics are topics that are on everyone's mind. And in a way, they can come up a lot in essays. They can make a student disappear into the crowd. And then it can also kind of come across as showing morality in a way that seems like a bit of a stretch, like I'm showing morality points by talking about this. So I recommend not going there unless it really is a long-term passion. For POC students, this is an especially important consideration. I have found that focusing on race-based hardships or race in general when you're a POC student can risk obscuring your application, obscuring the college's perception of you. What's most important with an application is that they see the whole student. This is true of every single application. What's most important is they see the whole of you. And if they see you through a racial hardship lens, especially, it can get in the way of them seeing you as a brilliant student, a very curious student, someone who is passionate about learning and changing things. So I recommend treading with caution on that. However, I have helped quite a few POC students talk about race-based hardships in their application in a way that I thought was very skillful, very graceful, really brilliant. And if that's you, let's do it. I'm all about it. And then very briefly before we end, I want to say a few things about the timeline of an essay writing process. The first thing you want to do is just get the bones down. The first draft should really not be about polish or word count. It's just about the story, getting it, or the structure really. Get the basic shape. Do not worry about sounding sophisticated. Those essays we just read had been through many, many drafts, I can tell you. So you definitely don't want to think like the final product right away. think just the basic story. Get it done. The second step is to do draft 2. You want to read the first draft and ask yourself some key questions. What do I learn in this story? If you're doing a patchwork essay, you could ask it, what do I learn when I am using this object or in this space or doing this ritual? What do I learn about me? You want to summarize it in one word. It's just helpful to summarize these things in one word. The Costco essay, you could say curiosity. The truck essay, confidence. And then what is the message about me the essay is trying to communicate? So you read draft 1 and you ask yourself, what am I learning in this? And then what is the message about me this essay is communicating? You want to summarize that in a sentence. So the Costco essay, you could say, I am someone who has an insatiable desire to learn and has no fear about learning this, that, and the other. The truck essay could be, I'm someone who embraces overcoming shyness and is dedicated in what I love. Then you want to do a second draft where you just focus on this theme and this message. Still, you don't want to think about word count. So you have the first draft for the structure and the story. The second draft is another layer on top of that. You're writing to find language for the theme to help really focus the theme. The third is the next draft and every draft after that until you get to the final draft. Again, read the previous draft and ask yourself some important questions. When are you immersed in the story? And when do you hear your unique point of view and thinking come through? Every time you rewrite, you want to ensure that every line immerses the reader in the story and your unique point of view. Those are the key questions to consider every time you rewrite. And then you're done basically when you feel like every single line immerses the reader in the story and your point of view. Again, do not worry about word count as you're doing this. I know that might sound surprising, but I find that when we worry about word count, we don't give ourselves the creative freedom and space to get those lines that immerse us in story and point of view. For the polish and the trim, I recommend working with an adult or a professional writer. This kind of writing takes a lot of skill, and to whittle it down to the 650 word limit for the common application, I think takes some help. And then once you have that final draft, don't be just done with it and submit it. You actually should share it with adults who understand the college admissions process and ask their impressions. So your counselors at school, favorite teachers, adult relatives, who you think understand the college admissions process. And lastly, I highly encourage every single person to hire a professional admissions essay coach. It really helps get things to the level that we want them at. So there's many coaches out there like me. I really recommend getting a hold of one. And being here in this webinar, you're kind of doing that already, so bravo, good for you. A few things about me in case you're curious and some of my services. So like I said, I do an initial consultation for free for anybody who fills out my college essay starter. So if you want, you can schedule that directly online. I'm putting it in the chat now at my Calendly. You just go straight there and find a 30-minute slot for yourself. I'm happy to meet you once you have your college essay starter filled in. I also help students with list building for colleges. If that's the place you're at still, I'm happy to help with that. It's something I love doing, help a lot of students with. I help students, obviously, write the essay. So the bulk of my work is my essay coaching programs. They are proven. They have amazing results. All my students get into their first choice or second choice schools. So if that is something you're interested in, I have a great track record. And my process is very step by step. We get through the whole thing together. I also help with some of the things around the essay that are part of the application, like your activities list, your college resume, your interview prep, this thing called demonstrated interest, which is engaging with the college outside of the application to create a track record with them. This has become more and more important since 2020, the COVID year, where things really changed in the admissions process. Also, I just help lessen the stress. Um, you know, Parents can put all of the project onto me. And I have pricings and plans for all budgets and needs. So wherever you're at financially, I can help out. Great. I have a few promotions very quickly. For any of you who know Admitsy, I want to give you a promotion. Um, Use the code WOW25 off to get a discount at the 2020 for the 2022 class at Admitsy. For those of you who don't know what this is a really cool service. I just put that in the chat for you. This is a really cool service for looking at applications that have been submitted and successful. Really, really great. And then when you go to college, you can be hired by Admitsy to share your information and make some money. And then lastly, I have a deal for my unlimited packages. If you sign up with me by the end of the day this Friday, I'll give you 10% off an unlimited package. And just email me to learn more. You can see my email here on the screen. I'll also just throw it into the chat in case you want to copy it that way. My limited packages, cover all the things needed to submit an excellent application. And you can get support for a couple of schools, or maybe like a handful, like 5 schools, or every single school on your list. And I also have a package for UC students, and also doing the main statement. But the unlimited packages are for multiple schools. Anyway, these are of great value to all the families who do them, and I love supporting students through this process. It's a great time of year for me. So with all of that, I will open it up for questions. Oh, it says I don't have any spots open this month or next. Well, that's not true. There must be something wrong in Calendly. So I will fix that. Go check that later tonight or tomorrow, and I'll have those spots opened up for you. Great. So now for Q&A. Let me take a look at the Q&A. Yes, you will get a recording of the PowerPoint. Deborah Hellman asks, is crafting your essay the summer before junior year too early? Yes. Yes. That answer is your question. Do not write your essay before you are a senior. I mean, the year before senior year is good. The thing is, colleges admit seniors, high school seniors. They don't admit high school juniors or sophomores. And there's a lot of growth that happens in high school. So I really recommend everybody wait until the summer of before senior year to start writing. Now, think about it before then for sure. Think about the moments you've really grown in your life. But in general, the story that you share ought to be as recent as possible, because the person they're admitting is changing a lot, and you want to be as close to your current age in the story. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. Anybody else have a question before we sign off? I know we're over time a little bit. All right. Well, one question that some students often ask me is whether or not they should change their essay for each school, and the answer is no. Um, each school is somewhat unique in what it emphasizes, but it's just too much labor and work to try and guess what to emphasize in your essay. I really recommend making a really strong personal statement and then let that represent you everywhere. When you get to the supplements, then you can personalize things. But for the main statement, I wouldn't do that. Someone asks, would it be good to make your essay about a nonprofit you've started? Yes, that would be great. That would be great. As long as you are talking about yourself in personal terms, I would say that's great. It'd be really useful to uncover what is a key moment in the creation of the nonprofit that really forced you to grow. That would be the question I would ask you as your coach. So pinpoint that moment and tell a story about that. And then reflect on the theme of that growth and observations and questions and insights about the theme of that growth. That would be a great place to start. Congratulations on starting a nonprofit. That is not an easy thing to do. So bravo. All right, anybody else? Any other questions? What are my rates? My rates are different depending on what you get. If you'd like to know more about them, just email me and I can send you my services sheet, and it can show you what the different rates are. Great question. All right, everybody. I think that's enough for now. Please go ahead, get your college essay starters filled in, and I look forward to reading them. Send them to me, and then sign up on the Calendly for the consultation. Please copy the chat so that you have the link to my Calendly and the other things. Otherwise, I wish you all a great evening. It's been great to talk to you and share with you my insights. And hopefully we'll work together soon. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.